You put the corn in the puddin' and the puddin' in the bowl. You put the bowl in your belly 'cause it's good for your soul. Never had corn pudding and it might be a waste. But if you got some extra, I sure would like a taste. Welcome to Teacup for One. My name is Matt and I have 2 degrees. And friends, last night I did something that I never thought I would do. I signed up for an Apple TV subscription. I know, right? If you're like me, you're probably thinking, Matt, why would you do that? You already have Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney Plus. What more could a Matt need? I'll tell you what more a Matt could need. A television musical parody of 1940s and 1950s musicals, born out of the creative and hilarious brains that brought us Saturday Night Live and the Addams Family values. I am, of course, talking about Schmigadoon. I think that's how the song went. I don't know. It was basically Oklahoma. I'm talking about Schmigadoon. Schmigadoon is a brand new Apple TV original series starring Cecily Strong and Keegan Michael Key, as well as an ensemble made up of pretty much the best film, television, and musical theater actors who are currently alive. And it's not a super original concept, but it's a really fun one. So, Cecily Strong and Keegan Michael Key play 2 doctors who are in a relationship, but not married. That's very important. And they're kind of having trouble in their relationship, so they go on a relationship retreat. And then they end up getting lost in the woods, and they stumble upon this big, beautiful, colorful town called Schmigadoon. Where the men are men and the cows are cows. And very shortly they realize that they have found themselves trapped in a musical. And then, for some reason, a leprechaun, played by Martin Short, shows up and tells them in rhyme that the only way they can escape this reality of musical theater is if they find true love. And then that kind of sparks a conversation where they're like, oh wait, are we actually one another's true love? And then they break up, and I don't really know what happens after that because at the time I'm recording this video, only the first 2 episodes have released. So I'm really excited and interested to see where this show goes. But I wanted to do a quick video review just of these first 2 episodes to share my initial thoughts, because this show is really an amalgamation of all of the things that I claim are my favorite things. My favorite things. Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens. There are actually no raindrops, roses, or whiskers on kittens. But what we do have is really clever comedic geniuses coming together to make fun of golden age musicals. And because I love musicals so much, it kind of puts me in a weird place with this show where I'm watching it and really enjoying it, but also being extra critical. But I thought it'd be fun to just do a quick overview of my initial thoughts of the show before we really know what's going to happen and how the entire series is going to unfold. Now, I'm going to start with the good, and I think beyond a shadow of a doubt, the strongest thing that this series has going for it is the cast. It is this incredible combination of some of SNL's finest talent with some of the best musical theater actors that we have right now. We are talking people like Keegan Michael Key, Cecily Strong, Kristen Chenoweth, Alan Cumming, Jane Krakowski, Martin Short. When I first saw this cast list announced, I was floored. This ensemble is incredible. I actually have no idea how they could afford this cast, but they did, and I'm grateful for it. Now, since we're only 2 episodes in at the time of me recording this, I haven't really had a chance to see everyone in the cast shine to their full potential, but I wanted to talk about the performers that really stood out to me. I think the cast is interesting because a lot of them have been typecast in the types of roles that they've established in their careers. So, like Dove Cameron is playing on type, Alan Cumming is playing a very Alan Cumming-esque character. But then we also have a lot of these top-tier actors playing against type, which is what I find so fascinating to watch. And those really were the standouts for me in these first 2 episodes. So, bar none, I think the most engaging person to watch for me so far has been Cecily Strong. I haven't been super familiar with her work outside of SNL to this point, and on SNL I just think of her as one of those really funny, wacky character actors. This is the first time that I've seen her playing the straight man, and she is doing it so well. Like, Cecily Strong is such a legitimately strong actor, and she's got a really nice singing voice. She's the person grounding the show for me. Like, this show could really fall into the dangerous territory of being a little too much, and she's keeping it grounded in reality and engaging and funny and worth watching, and she is really my favorite so far. Another standout for me is Kristen Chenoweth. It's been really fascinating just watching the evolution of her career over the last 15 to 20 years or so. The first time I was really aware of her was when she won the Tony Award for You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown as, sweet little Sally Brown. And then I knew of her as this, sweet little ingenue soprano that was taken over Broadway. But then over the last 5 to 10 years or so, she's really grown into taking much more villainous roles, which is not something I would have expected, but she does them so well. And I think she really has a chance to shine in all of her evil grandeur in this show. And I'm so excited to see where this character progresses in future episodes. It's also really funny seeing her in this role in a town that's very reminiscent of The Music Man, considering that she played Marion the Librarian in The Music Man on TV with Matthew Broderick, back in the early 2000s. So, it just kind of goes full circle, and for a nerdy, pretentious musical theater fan like me, that's fun to see. The other standout for me is Aaron Tveit, who is basically playing Billy Bigelow from Carousel. So there's no doubt, I think, in anyone's mind that Aaron Tveit is ridiculously talented. I mean, he was in Next to Normal on Broadway, Moulin Rouge, he was Danny Zuko in Grease Live, he was Andre Law in the Les Mis movie, but this role is such a weird, awesome change of pace for him. Because I think to this point in his career, he's kind of established himself as being the male ingenue, I don't know what the word for that is, the tenor hero guy. And this role, again, is basically the Billy Bigelow. So he's playing someone who's a little bit more jaded and a little bit older, but the thing that's the biggest change of pace with him is just seeing him play comedy.
Sure.
When a squirrel wants another squirrel, he don't bother to get attached.
Oh, you got a private show.
I've never seen Aaron Tveit play this style of comedy, and he's hilarious. And the other standout for me is Carson. Just a little kid who shows up and just outright tells you what's happening. It's the mayor!
It's the mayor!
Just the earnest quality with which he does everything, I think, is hilarious.
It's Mrs. Layden!
I really hope they don't overuse him in the series, but I don't know. To this point, he's one of my favorite things in the show. As far as the music goes, I mean, I'm not a music person necessarily, but I do know my musicals, and I'm very familiar with the Rodgers and Hammerstein canon, and I'm so thoroughly impressed at how they've managed to, put together these compositions that sound almost identical to the things that they're parodying, while still making them completely original.
Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping down the plain.
Now, as for the concept, I mean, it's not a super original idea, and it's one that I feel is starting to become, I don't want to say tired, but we're seeing it a lot now, where we have people from contemporary society being thrown into some kind of nostalgic wonderland. And I know that's been a plot point forever. It's Alice in Wonderland, it's The Wizard of Oz, but I think it's something that we're seeing more recently with people, with characters being thrown into something that is very, like I said, nostalgic. And the big example that comes to mind right now is WandaVision. And now, just being 2 episodes into Schmigadoon, I kind of have the same hesitancies and suspicions that I had with WandaVision at the beginning, but I don't have the same optimism that I had with WandaVision insofar as how I think everything's going to resolve. So with WandaVision, 2 episodes in, I was absolutely sold on the nostalgic fun. But I knew that I was going to be really annoyed if we reached the end of the series and it turned out that everything was just a dream in Wanda's head. And the pacing for WandaVision was so brilliant because it threw us curveballs when we least expected it, and it was constantly shaking up the format. And in the end, the entire series just ended up being a really well-calculated beautiful reflection on grief. And I think the reason that the pure sitcom episodes of WandaVision worked so well, like I mentioned in my WandaVision videos, was because they were playing everything authentically. So they weren't just going for a surface recreation of those cheesy sitcoms, they were tapping into the characters and the relationships that made those cheesy sitcoms so lovable. I'm getting the vibe that Schmigadoon is the polar opposite of all of that. I'm 90% sure that everything that we're going to see in the series is just a fabrication or something that's going on in Cecily Strong's character's head, just mostly because of that one little moment at the beginning when she was watching Singing in the Rain, so I'm assuming it's the classic trope of, oh, she wanted to escape to something that felt familiar and fun to work out her relationship issues, and I mean, that's fine, that's nice. But then the other thing is that the way that they've created this musical theater world, there's no authenticity there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is a full, outright parody. And I'm kind of okay with it. I think the show is at its funniest when they are doing very specific musical theater references that not necessarily everybody would understand, but for those who do understand, genius. What's really coming to mind right now is, again, everything that had to do with Aaron Tveit's character and the Carousel parody. So, I mean, he's pretty much speaking word for word everything that Billy says during If I Loved You, and the moment that got me the most was when he said, "You're a funny kid," and then just like a handful of cherry blossoms fell. And then Cecily Strong just said, "Oh, cherry blossoms. They do that when it's windy." And I think some of the humor that's not necessarily making fun of any one specific musical is really clever in its own right. And I mean, when I say that, when you're doing a musical parody, there are a lot of things that are easy to make fun of. Like, oh, people breaking out into song and dance for no reason. Obvious joke. Or like an entire town singing about a clam bake or corn pudding. Obvious joke. But then there are like the less obvious jokes, the ones that call attention to certain tropes from old movie musicals that you're aware of but never really clocked. What really comes to mind is just how they really hit you over the head with the age difference between Dove Cameron's character and Keegan Michael Key when he wins her in the picnic basket auction, and then they go for the picnic and then she says, "Oh look, it's the tree that my daddy planted the day I was born," and then the tree is like 2 feet high. So suffice it to say, there's a lot that this show is doing that I think is genius, and I am on board with 100%. But then there's other things that are kind of annoying me. Mostly just that the entire vibe of Schmigadoon, especially the visual aesthetic of Schmigadoon, is really playing into this, I think, misconception that musicals are always squeaky clean and that musicals are just mindless pieces of fluff. And I know why they're doing it. They're clearly playing into this whole idea that, you know, real life is more complicated than what we see on stage in a musical, and true love might not exist, and it's more complicated than that, blah, 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 blah. But for someone who loves musicals as much as I do, this is something that I do see a lot when people are talking about musicals or criticizing them. That really kind of annoys me, because I don't think musicals, specifically older musicals, get the credit that they deserve. A perfect example is Rodgers and Hammerstein. Schmigadoon has some very overt, clear ties to Rodgers and Hammerstein. I would say like 80% of what they're making fun of is something from the Rodgers and Hammerstein canon. And this is the thing with Rodgers and Hammerstein. I think their shows are just on the surface the thing that people automatically think of when they decide they don't like musicals. Like cowboys singing and dancing, sailors singing and dancing. And yes, of course, those are parts of their musicals. But these musicals were written like almost as a response to pieces of musical entertainment that were just mindless fluff. When Oklahoma opened in whatever year it opened in, it was completely out of the ordinary for the curtain to go up and then just see an old woman churning butter and a cowboy coming on stage singing. People were like, where are the showgirls? Where's the glitz? Where's the glamour? Because Rodgers and Hammerstein understood character and understood story. And all of their musicals have incredibly rich characters with a lot of depth to them, beautiful, complicated storylines, and I think all of those things are usually overshadowed largely because of the movie adaptations that were made of those musicals in the 1950s and the 1940s. You know, that was a time period where Technicolor was brand new, so they wanted to have bright, vibrant costumes to really take advantage of the technology. And just because of the filmmaking conventions of the time, that's what created the overall bright, colorful, fluffy aesthetic that people now associate with musicals. And it overshadows how beautifully written those shows actually were. And as a result, it's kind of created this perception that if you're doing a musical, it's a free pass at throwing in whatever mindless fantasy crap you want, even if it doesn't serve the story, which is totally counterintuitive to what Rodgers and Hammerstein were doing, but, you know, genres evolve, that's how it goes. And I think what Schmigadoon is doing is that they're playing into this stereotype, and I don't know how I feel about it yet. If they're doing it for a purpose that's going to develop into something, then I can get on board with it. But if they're doing it because they want us to buy into thinking that that's what musicals just are, I don't know, I kind of think it's a discredit to the genre that the show seems to be trying to celebrate. You know, the thing that just really turned me off was as soon as they entered Schmigadoon, everything looked like it was out of Candyland. It was pure fantasy, and for the type of town that they're building, a town that doesn't really have any magical elements yet that we know of, it felt like it should be more Disney's Main Street USA. Is it a fun show? Oh, it is absolutely a fun show. I have already watched each episode twice, and after recording this video, I'm probably going to go watch it at least 2 more times, because it's so much fun, and it's speaking to all of the things that I love. But is it necessarily a good show? You know, is it a show that I'm going to want to go back to after I watch it the first time? That still remains to be seen. If it turns out that everything is in fact some kind of weird fever dream, I will be pretty disappointed. The route I'd really like to see this go is something similar to what we see in the movie Pleasantville. Pleasantville, amazing movie. So what I'm saying is that you have the 2 characters from the real world infiltrating this crazy over-the-top world and interacting with the characters and then helping them find some kind of grounding or teaching them what it means to live a more complicated life than a reality where everything is either black and white, pleasant or unpleasant, true love or not true love. Like, those shades of gray are something that I think are really essential to explore when you're doing a piece like this, because I don't know, if you don't have a purpose for throwing the characters into this crazy, mixed up, over-the-top world, then you're really just giving us the mindless fluff that you seem to be making fun of. You put the corn in the puddin' and the puddin' in the bowl. You put the bowl in your belly because it's good for your soul. Okay, anyway, friends, this concludes yet another episode of Teacup 41. Now, I'm curious, let me know in the comment section down below, have you watched Schmigadoon yet? And what are your thoughts? And if you want to be the first to know when I put out more reviews about future Schmigadoon episodes, or just when I put out videos talking about movies, Shakespeare, Funkos, sometimes cats, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. If you haven't subscribed already, it's super easy. All you have to do is click on my face. Thank you again for joining me today, everyone. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the Teacup for 1. Go away!